listening, squirrels. Of course, I forgot to bring something to drink in here again. I was just doing my squealing squirrel mail, so I forgot about it. But I thought I'd go ahead and do the reading for today. Let's finish up chapter, whatever we were on, 11? 12? It's on the title. At that very moment, Mark was confirming this judgment on himself in a talk with Sir Henry Clithering. By the way, there's a kitty cat outside that's being awfully vocal. He belongs to one of the neighbors. With characteristic candor, Mark had gone straight to the heart of things. It just dawned on me, he said, that I'm favorite suspect number one to the police. They've been delving into my financial troubles. I'm broke, or very nearly. If dear old Jeff dies according to schedule in a month or two, and Addie and I divide the dibs, also according to schedule, I will be well. Matter of fact, I owe rather a lot. If the crash comes, it will be a big one. If I can stave it off, it will be the other way round. I shall come out on top and be a very rich man. Sir Henry Clithering said, "You're a gambler, Mark." "Always have been. Risk everything. That's my motto." "Yes, it's a lucky thing for me that somebody strangled that poor kid. I didn't do it. I'm not a strangler. I don't really think I could ever murder anybody. I'm too easygoing. But I don't suppose I can ask the police to believe that. I must look to them like the answer to the criminal investigator's prayer. I had a motive, was on the spot. I'm not burdened with high moral scruples. I can't imagine why I'm not in the jug already. That superintendent's got a very nasty eye. You've got that useful thing, an alibi. An alibi is the fishiest thing on God's earth. No innocent person ever has an alibi. Besides, it all depends on the time of death or something like that. You may be sure if 3 doctors say the girl was killed at midnight, at least 6 will be found who will swear positively that she was killed at 5 in the morning. And where's my alibi then? At any rate, you're able to joke about it. Damn bad taste, isn't it?" said Mark cheerfully. "Actually, I'm rather scared. One is with murder, and don't think I'm not sorry for old Jeff. I am, but it's better this way, bad as the shock was that he found her out." "What do you mean, found her out?" Mark winked. "Where did she go off to last night? I'll lay you any odds you like she went to meet a man. Jeff wouldn't have liked that. He wouldn't have liked it at all. If he'd found she was deceiving him, that she wasn't the prattling little innocent she seemed, well. My father-in-law is an odd man. He's a man of great self-control, but that self-control can snap. And then, look out." Sir Henry glanced at him curiously. "Are you fond of him or not?" "I'm very fond of him, and at the same time I resent him. I'll try and explain. Conway Jefferson is a man who likes to control his surroundings. He's a benevolent despot, kind, generous, and affectionate, but his is the tune and the others dance to his piping." Mark Gaskell paused. "I loved my wife. I shall never feel the same for anyone else. Rosamond was sunshine and laughter and flowers, and when she was killed, I felt just like a man in the ring who's had a knockout blow. But the referee's been counting a good long time now. I'm a man, after all. I like women. I don't want to marry again, not in the least. Well, that's all right. I've had to be discreet, but I've had my good times all right. Poor Addie hasn't. Addie's a really nice woman. She's the kind of woman men want to marry, not to sleep with. Give her half a chance and she would marry again and be very happy and make the chap happy too. But old Jeff saw her always as Frank's wife and hypnotized her into seeing herself like that. He doesn't know it, but we've been in prison. I broke out on the quiet a long time ago. Addie broke out this summer and it gave him a shock. It split up his world. Result, Ruby Keene. Irrepressibly he sang, but she is in her grave, and oh, the difference to me. Come and have a drink, Clithering. It was hardly surprising, Sir Henry reflected, that Mark Gaskell should be an object of suspicion to the police. That's the end of 12. So we're going to go on to 13. Dr. Metcalf was one of the best known physicians in Dannemouth. He had no aggressive bedside manner, but his presence in the sick room had an invariably cheering effect. He was middle-aged with a quiet, pleasant voice. He listened carefully to Superintendent Harper and replied to his questions with gentle precision. Harper said, "Then I can take it, Dr. Metcalf, that what I was told by Mrs. Jefferson was substantially correct?" "Yes, Mr. Jefferson's health is in a precarious state. For several years now the man has been driving himself ruthlessly. In his determination to live like other men, he has lived at a far greater pace than the normal man of his age. He has refused to rest, to take things easy, to go slow, or any of the other phrases with which I and his other medical advisors have tendered our opinion. The result is that the man is an overworked engine. Heart, lungs, blood pressure, they're all overstrained. You say Mr. Jefferson has absolutely refused to listen?" "Yes, I don't know that I blame him. It's not what I say to my patient, Superintendent, but a man may as well wear out as rust out. A lot of my colleagues do that, and take it from me, it's not a bad way. In a place like Dannemouth, one sees most of the other thing. Invalids clinging to life, terrified of overexerting themselves, terrified of a breath of drafty air, of a stray germ, of an injudicious meal." "I expect that's true enough," said Superintendent Harper. "What it amounts to then is this: Conway Jefferson is strong enough, physically speaking, or I mean muscularly speaking. Just what can he do in the active line, by the way? He has immense strength in his arms and shoulders. He was a powerful man before his accident. He's extremely dexterous in his handling of his wheelchair, and with the aid of crutches he can move himself about a room from his bed to the chair, for instance. Isn't it possible for a man injured as Mr. Jefferson was to have artificial legs?" "Not in his case. There was a spine injury." "I see. Let me sum up again. Jefferson is strong and fit. In the muscular sense, he feels well and all that?" Metcalf nodded, "but his heart is in bad condition. Any overstrain or exertion, or a shock, or a sudden fright, and he might pop off. Is that it?" "More or less. Overexertion is killing him slowly because he won't give in when he feels tired. That aggravates the cardiac condition. It's unlikely that exertion would kill him suddenly, but a sudden shock or fright might easily do so. That's why I expressly warned his family," Superintendent Harper said slowly. "But in actual fact, the shock didn't kill him. I mean, doctor, that there couldn't have been a much worse shock than this business, and he's still alive?" Dr. Metcalf shrugged his shoulders. "I know, but if you'd had my experience, Superintendent, you know that case history shows the impossibility of prognosticating accurately. People who ought to die of shock and exposure don't die of shock and exposure, etc., etc. The human frame is tougher than one could imagine possible. Moreover, in my experience, a physical shock is more often fatal than a mental shock. In plain language, a door banging suddenly would be more likely to kill Dr. Jefferson than the discovery that a girl he was fond of had died in a particularly horrible manner. Why is that, I wonder? The breaking of a piece of bad news nearly always sets up a defense reaction. It numbs the recipient. They are unable at first to take it in. Full realization takes a little time, but the banged door, someone jumping out of a cupboard, the sudden onslaught of a motor as you cross a road, all those things are immediate in their action. The heart gives a terrified leap, to put it in layman's language. Superintendent Harper said slowly, but as far as anyone would know, Mr. Jefferson's death might easily have been caused by the shock of the girl's death. Oh, easily. The doctor looked curiously at the other. You don't think? I don't know what I think, said Superintendent Harper vexedly. But you'll admit, sir, that the two things would fit in very prettily together, he said a little later to Sir Henry Clithering. Kill two birds with one stone. First the girl, and the fact of her death takes off Mr. Jefferson, too, before he's had any opportunity of altering his will. You'd be more likely to know that, sir, than I would. What do you say? I don't know. Before Ruby King came on the scene, I happened to know that he had left his money between Mark Gaskell and Mrs. Jefferson. I don't see why he should now change his mind about that, but of course he might do so. Might leave it to a cat's home or two subsidized young professional dancers. Superintendent Harper agreed. You never know what a man is going to get in his bonnet, especially when he doesn't feel there's any moral obligation in the disposal of his fortune. No blood relations in this case. Sir Henry said, he is fond of the boy, of young Peter. Do you think he regards him as his grandson? You know that better than I would, sir. Sir Henry said slowly, no, don't think so. There's another thing I'd like to ask you, sir. It's a thing I can't judge for myself, but they're friends of yours, and so you'd know. I'd like very much to know just how fond Mr. Jefferson is of Mr. Gaskell and young Mrs. Jefferson. Sir Henry frowned. I'm not sure if I understand you, Superintendent. Well, it's this way, sir. How fond is he of them as persons, apart from his relationship to them? Ah, I see what you mean. Yes, sir, nobody doubts that he was very attached to them both, but he was attached to them, as I see, because they were respectively the husband and wife of his daughter and son. But supposing, for instance, one of them had married again. Sir Henry reflected. He said, it's an interesting point you raise, but I don't know. I'm inclined to suspect, this is a mere opinion, that it would have altered his attitude a good deal. He would have wished them well, borne no rancor, but I rather think that he would have taken very little more interest in them. In both cases, sir? I think so, yes. In Mr. Gaskell's almost certainly, and I rather think in Mrs. Jefferson's also, but that's not nearly so certain. I think he was fond of her for her own sake. Sex would have something to do with that, said Superintendent Harper sufficiently. Easier for him to look on her as a daughter than to look on Mr. Gaskell as a son. It works both ways. Women accept a son-in-law as one of the family easy enough, but there aren't many times when a woman looks on her son's wife as a daughter. Superintendent Harper went on, mind if we walk along this path, sir, to the tennis court? I see Miss Marple sitting there. I want to ask her to do something for me. As a matter of fact, I want to rope you both in. In what way, Superintendent? To get at stuff that I can't get at myself, I want you to tackle Edwards for me, sir. Edwards? What do you want from him? Everything you can think of, everything he knows and what he thinks about the relations between the various members of the family, his angle on the Ruby Keene business, inside stuff. He knows better than anyone the state of affairs. You bet he does. And he wouldn't tell me, but he'll tell you. And something might turn up from it. That is, of course, if you don't object. Sir Henry said grimly, I don't object. I've been sent for urgently to get at the truth. I mean to do my utmost. He added, how do you want Miss Marple to help you? With some girls, some of those girl guides. We rounded up half a dozen or so. The ones who were most friendly with Pamela Reeves. It's possible that they may know something. You see, I've been thinking. Seems to me that if that girl was really going to Woolworth's, she would have tried to persuade one of the other girls to go with her. Girls usually like to shop with someone. Yes, I think that's true. So I think it's possible that Woolworth's was only an excuse. I want to know where the girl was really going. She may have let slip something. If so, I feel Miss Marple's the right person to get it out of those girls. I'd say she knows a thing or two about girls more than I do, and anyway, they'd be scared of the police. It sounds to me the kind of village domestic problem that is right up Miss Marple's street. She's very sharp, you know. The superintendent smiled. He said, I'll say you're right. Nothing much gets past her. Miss Marple looked up at their approach and welcomed them eagerly. She listened to the superintendent's request and at once acquiesced. I should like to help you very much, Superintendent, and I think that perhaps I could be of some use. What with the Sunday school, you know, and the brownies and our guides, the orphanage quite near. I'm on the committee, you know, and I often run in to have a little talk with matron. And then servants. I usually have very young maids. Oh, yes, I've quite a lot of experience in when a girl is speaking the truth and when she is holding something back. In fact, you're an expert, said Sir Henry. Miss Marple flashed him a reproachful glance and said, oh, please don't laugh at me, Sir Henry. I shouldn't dream of laughing at you. You've had the laugh of me too many times. One does see so much evil in a village, murmured Miss Marple in an explanatory voice. By the way, said Sir Henry, I've cleared up one point you asked me about. The superintendent tells me there were nail clippings in Ruby's wastepaper basket. Miss Marple said thoughtfully, there were? Then that's that. Why did you want to know, Miss Marple? Asked the superintendent. Miss Marple said it was one of the things that seemed wrong when I looked at the body. The hands were wrong somehow, and I couldn't at first think why. Then I realized the girls who are very much made up and all that usually have very long fingernails. Of course, I know that girls everywhere do bite their nails. It's one of those habits that are hard to break oneself of. But vanity often does a lot to help. Still, I presume that this girl hadn't cured herself. And then the little boy, Peter, you know, he said something which showed that her nails had been long. Only she caught one and broke it, so then, of course, she might have trimmed off the rest to make an even appearance. And I asked about clippings, and Sir Henry said he'd find out. Sir Henry remarked, you said just now one of the things that seemed wrong when you looked at the body. Was there something else? Miss Marple nodded vigorously. "Oh, yes," she said. "There was the dress. The dress was all wrong." Both men looked at her curiously. "Now why?" said Sir Henry. "Well, you see, it was an old dress. Josie said so, definitely, and I could see for myself it was shabby and rather worn. Now that's all wrong." "I don't see why." Miss Marple got a little pink. "Well, the idea is, isn't it, that Ruby King changed her dress and went off to meet someone on whom she presumably had what my young nephews call a crush." The superintendent's eyes twinkled a little. "That's the theory. She'd got a date with someone, a boyfriend, as the saying goes." "Then why," demanded Miss Marple, "was she wearing an old dress?" The superintendent scratched his head thoughtfully. He said, "I see your point. You think she'd wear a new one." "I think she'd wear her best dress. Girls do." Sir Henry interposed. "Yes, but look here, Miss Marple. Suppose she was going outside to this rendezvous, going in an open car perhaps, or walking in some rough going. That's... I'm missing my spot here. Doggone it. Going in an open car, walking in some rough going. Then she'd not want to risk messing a new frock, and she'd put on an old one." "That would be the sensible thing to do," agreed the superintendent. Miss Marple turned on him. She spoke with animation. "The sensible thing to do would be to change into trousers and a pullover, or into tweeds. That, of course, I don't want to be snobbish, but I'm afraid it's unavoidable. That's what a girl of our class would do. A well-bred girl," continued Miss Marple, warming to her subject, "is always very particular to wear the right clothes for the right occasion. I mean, however hot the day was, a well-bred girl would never turn up at point to point in a silk flowered frock." "A point to point?" "And the correct wear to meet a lover?" demanded Sir Henry. "If she were meeting him inside the hotel, or somewhere where evening dress was worn, she'd wear her best evening frock, of course. But outside, she'd feel she looked ridiculous in evening dress, and she'd wear her most attractive sportswear. Granted, fashion queen, but the girl Ruby," Miss Marple said. "Ruby, of course, wasn't, well, to put it bluntly, Ruby wasn't a lady. She belonged to the class that wear their best clothes, however unsuitable to the occasion. Last year, you know, we had a picnic outing at Scranter Rocks. You'd be surprised at the unsuitable clothes the girls wore. Fowler dresses and patent shoes and quite elaborate hats, some of them, for climbing about over rocks and in gorse and heather. And the young men in their best suits. Of course, hiking's different again. That's practically a uniform, and girls don't seem to realize that shorts are very unbecoming unless they're very slender." The superintendent said slowly, "And you think that Ruby King—" "I think she'd have kept on the frock she was wearing, her best pink one. She'd only have changed it if she'd had something newer still." Superintendent Harper said, "And what's your explanation, Miss Marple?" Miss Marple said, "I haven't got one yet, but I can't help feeling that it's important." Inside the wire cage, the tennis lesson that Raymond Starr was giving had come to an end. A stout, middle-aged woman uttered a few appreciative squeaks, picked up a sky-blue cardigan, and went off towards the hotel. Raymond called out a few gay words after her. Then he turned towards the bench where the three onlookers were sitting. The balls dangled in a net in his hand. His racket was under one arm. The gay, laughing expression on his face was wiped off as though by a sponge from a slate. He looked tired and worried. Coming towards them, he says, "That's over." Then the smile broke out again, that charming, boyish, expressive smile that went so harmoniously with his suntanned face and dark, lithe grace. Sir Henry found himself wondering how old the man was. 25, 30, 35? It was impossible to say. Raymond said, shaking his head a little, "She'll never be able to play, you know." "All this must be very boring for you," said Miss Marple. Let me see how much more I've got. I'm getting a little thirsty. Oh, yeah, a good bit. A good bit. So I'll stop there on chapter 13. Love y'all. Be sweet, don't be ugly. See you around the YouTube streets. Crochet Adventures with Kelly. Kelly's Crochet Adventures. One of those she should be on tonight. I think it's 7:05. So I'll be there. If she's there, I'll be there. Love y'all. Be sweet, don't be ugly. I said that, didn't I? Bye.